She held the hand of the dying, yet smiled as if she touched heaven. She walked through streets filled with despair, not to preach, but to love. And the man telling her story. He lived beside her, saw her weep, saw her laugh, saw the divine in her every breath. This isn't just a story about Mother Teresa. It's about what happens when love stops being a word and becomes your life's mission. You're listening to Love and Be Loved, the untold personal portrait of Mother Teresa by Jim Towey.
Hello, everyone. Hi, all, and welcome to BookPodCastZone. And we're joined today by our expert guide as we delve into, well, a truly remarkable book.
It's great to be here. And yes, remarkable feels like the right word. Jim Towey's To Love and Be Loved. It's something special.
It really is. Today, we are taking a deep dive into this memoir. And it's not just, a standard biography. It's more like a chronicle of a radical life change, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's about transformation. Towey's transformation primarily through his relationship with Mother Teresa. Right, because Towey wasn't exactly coming from a monastery. He was this high-powered Washington lawyer, the absolute picture of D.C. success.
Exactly. Top law firms, political connections. He was in that world. And then he becomes her legal counsel, but it deepens into something much more profound, a close associate, a confidant, someone who saw the day-to-day reality.
So our goal here for this deep dive, what are we trying to unpack?
Well, our mission really is to get past the headlines, past the sort of simplified image of Mother Teresa. We're synthesizing Towey's journey across these 15 chapters, trying to extract the emotional core, the spiritual architecture of her life, but specifically as he saw it, as an insider.
That insider perspective feels crucial.
It's vital because Towey offers kind of balance. Many accounts are either pure hagiography, saintly perfection, or they swing the other way, focusing only on criticisms of her methods or organization.
He gives us the person.
He gives us the person. Flawed, yes.
Yeah.
Fiercely purposeful, absolutely. Human, but also, through his eyes, grappling with something deeply spiritual ultimately. Saintly. He saw the whole picture.
And I think what really grabs you from the start is who Towey was when this all began, that context.
Yeah.
It changes how you read everything.
It really does. Because his world, that Washington world, it ran on different metrics, didn't it?
Yeah.
Status, influence, power plays, the cost of your suit.
Yeah, the whole machinery.
Right. And his entire value system, what he thought success meant, it gets completely turned upside down by this tiny, unassuming woman in a simple cotton sari.
It's an incredible contrast.
And for you, listening, maybe you're navigating that kind of high-pressure world right now. High status, maybe even high success, but maybe it feels a bit empty. Towey's journey is like a mirror. It shows that maybe the most valuable thing isn't influence in the DC sense, but presence. Real, quiet, powerful presence.
Okay, so let's start where Towey starts in his introduction. The Mother I Knew. He sets up this core theme right away, doesn't he? This clash between quiet power, Mother Teresa, and his own life, which was all about chasing success in the 1980s. A chase he admits felt pretty hollow.
He really does. He pulls you straight into the intimacy of this bond, which seems so unlikely on the surface.
Totally. And the emotional hook for me is his honesty. His confession about his own emptiness back then.
Yes, that raw confession. He talks about the 80s, achieving everything he thought he wanted, climbing the ladder, prestige, money, but inside. Feeling this profound void.
It wasn't about failing professionally.
Not at all. It was like a spiritual hollowness, despite the success. And then this hollowness crashes into Mother Teresa's gaze. He describes it as piercing.
Like she saw right through him.
Exactly. Right through the expensive suit, the professional mask. And in that moment, he says, there was this instant unspoken vow, a feeling that he had to change direction, fundamentally.
Wow, so the mask just disappears?
Yeah. Vaporizes. Yeah. And the key idea that flows from that, it's a tough one for us today, I think, living in such a performance-driven culture.
Definitely.
Is that real influence, real meaning, it comes from quiet presence, not fame, not status, and maybe even more importantly, love.
Yeah.
Real connection. It starts when someone sees your soul. Ignores all the external stuff.
It makes you think about today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's why Towey's 1980s burnout feels so relevant now. We talk about this modern crisis of authenticity all the time, this burnout epidemic we're seeing across the U.S., especially among people who are, by all external measures, incredibly successful.
Right, in tech, finance, law.
Yeah. They tick all the boxes society tells them to tick: the big salary, the reputation, the nice house, and they get there and find. It's not fulfilling. It's hollow. They've maybe built this amazing identity, but somehow lost touch with their actual self, their soul.
And you think about our metrics today in 2025. Followers, likes, this curated online life.
Right. It's all about the external validation. Towey's story just throws that into sharp relief. He shows how one single, real, authentic connection, the one he forged with her, completely outweighs thousands of those superficial digital likes.
Those don't actually provide real mental health support, do they? Or spiritual grounding.
Not really.
The
Nice.
contrast is just stark. It kind of indicts the metrics our culture often values most, doesn't it? He essentially traded this high-status world of, filtered, often transactional interactions
Yeah.
for one relationship built on total honesty, absolute presence. It's like when people talk today about needing a digital detox or searching for a genuine community, they're really looking for what Towey found, an anchor. Something real that isn't based on how well you perform.
And finding that anchor meant going somewhere completely outside his comfort zone. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. Which takes us right into Chapter 1, Calcutta. And Towey doesn't just, describe Kolkata. He plunges you right into it, the 1980s version. It feels chaotic, overwhelming. He really immerses you. The sensory details are so vivid. The dust, he says, it chokes the alleys. The sheer desperation you see, but also glimpses of resilience. It's not a simple picture.
No. And the core theme seems to be this immediate, almost violent confrontation with reality and with his own privilege.
Exactly. For a guy who moved through the, let's say, manicured landscapes of Washington, D.C.
Right. Controlled environments.
Totally. The emotional turning point is that first gut-wrenching sight. Street dwellers. Dying. Right there in the gutters, alone. He describes it hitting him like a physical blow. A thunderclap.
Yeah.
And it forces him instantly to confront the bubble he lived in, his American privilege, his assumptions. He's not just observing, he has to physically step into this mess of human suffering.
And the lessons he starts learning are pretty brutal, aren't they?
They are. Simple, but brutal. First, poverty isn't just about lacking stuff, material goods. It's a thief of dignity. It strips people bare. And second, if you actually want to serve, you can't do it from a distance. You can't observe from afar, write a check and feel good. You have to dive in, get into the mess. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. He realized you can't be a sterile spectator when the need is that raw.
That feels incredibly relevant even now, maybe especially now.
I think so too. You can draw a direct line from Towey's shock in 1980s Kolkata to the urban crises we see in the U.S. today. We're seeing this heartbreaking rise in very visible homelessness in major cities.
Yeah, you see it in L.A., San Francisco, New York.
Absolutely. The tents along freeways in L.A., the struggles with addiction on the streets in SF, places like Skid Row. When Towey describes the despair of Kolkata, we have to recognize that similar levels of visible, desperate human pain exist right here, sometimes just blocks away from gleaming corporate headquarters or government buildings.
And that proximity makes the whole observing from afar thing even trickier here, doesn't it?
It really does. It's almost easier to ignore when it's right there. The modern American tendency sometimes is to use these detached tools. Share a viral kindness challenge video, sign an online petition, donate anonymously through an app.
Clickfultivism, they call it.
Right. Clickdictivism, which isn't necessarily bad. But Towey's experience, guided by Mother Teresa's example, shows something else. True dignity-restoring change. It requires presence. It means showing up, getting your hands dirty, maybe literally, making eye contact, sitting with someone in their discomfort without trying to immediately fix it or look away.
It's a radical call against that detachment.
It really is. It's the difference between, say, sharing a video about a cleanup effort and actually being there, smelling the environment, maybe dealing with the frustrating bureaucracy, making those difficult, sometimes awkward human connections. That physical presence, that's what shifts your perspective.
Yeah.
Irrevocably. And that's what lays the groundwork for doing meaningful work.
And that perspective shift really gets cemented when he finally meets her. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. Okay, Chapter 2, Meeting Mother. This feels like the real pivot in the book, the moment everything changes for Towey. He describes this collision, right? The slick DC insider, all armored up.
Yeah, walking into this dim convent room, probably expecting a certain kind of meeting with a famous global figure.
And instead, he meets this small woman in a sari who just cuts through everything.
Exactly. The core theme is that sudden, total collapse of facades and the sheer, maybe even unsettling power of genuine presence.
He arrived ready to offer his legal expertise, right? Like, here I am, the capable lawyer.
That was the plan. But the emotional turning point, it defines their entire relationship from that moment on. He walks in wearing his metaphorical DC armor, and it just crumbles instantly under her simple, direct question.
What did she ask him?
She asked him about his soul's hunger. Not about his job, not about his connections, not about how he could help her legally. She went straight to the heart of that emptiness he was feeling.
Wow. No small talk then.
None. And he says that encounter turned his initial, maybe professional skepticism into this lifelong personal surrender. It wasn't a negotiation, it was a recognition.
He wasn't asked about billable hours. He was asked about his soul.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
It is.
Yeah.
And the key ideas that come out of that are huge. First, that meaningful encounters, real ones, they strip away all the facades we build up, all the performance.
Yeah.
And second, maybe crucially, that real mentorship, real guidance, it's built on being truly seen, maybe for the first time. Seen and accepted, flaws and all. Which is probably terrifying, but also incredibly liberating, especially if you spent your life perfecting the art of hiding behind success.
It feels like such an antidote to how we interact now, so much of it online.
It really does. This raw, immediate connection is the opposite of the digital fatigue so many people feel in the U.S. today, especially after these last few years. We're still grappling with a world that runs on Zoom calls, filtered Instagram posts, carefully curated online personas.
It's the ultimate anti-Zoom meeting, isn't it?
It really is. This chapter just highlights the irreplaceable, transformative power of showing up in person, being vulnerable, being real.
It makes you realize how hard it is to forge those really deep ties now in a culture dominated by screens and filters.
Exactly. That immediate, total honesty Towey experienced. It's a kind of deep, supportive connection people are often desperately seeking, maybe in therapy groups or recovery groups or just circles of friends trying to be more authentic. Environments where you're actually encouraged to take the mask off. Towey's surrender shows that real connection, and the growth that comes from it only happens when that armor comes down.
And that meeting, that surrender, it forced him to completely reevaluate his path. Like, subscribe and share for more update and continue to next.
Right, so chapter 3. To choose always the hardest takes us from that intense meeting to the consequences, the action. The core theme seems to be about defining your life not by comfort, but by conviction, by actively choosing the difficult path. Yes, and it's not just about Mother Teresa's choices, although that's central. It's about Towey realizing the immense cost, but also the immense value of the path that's opening up for him.
And he draws this parallel between her big choice and his own pivot, right?
He does, beautifully. The emotional turning point is when he connects the dots. He realizes that Mother Teresa's own radical leap, leaving a secure teaching job, a predictable life, for the utter unknown of the slums.
Yeah, that took incredible courage.
Immense courage. And he sees that mirrored in his own potential pivot. Giving up the power suits, the DC status, the money, for hospice shifts, for serving the poor, for a life of uncertainty. And he emphasizes that both choices, hers and his potential one, were agonizing. They involved doubt, tears, real human struggle. It wasn't an easy, heroic leap for either of them.
That humanity is key. It wasn't effortless conviction.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And the key ideas that come from this are so critical for anyone facing a major life decision, really. First, that real freedom, counterintuitively maybe, thrives in making hard choices, avoiding the difficult path. That often breeds regret, stagnation, that feeling of being stuck. But embracing the hard choices, the ones that demand sacrifice, that's what forges an unbreakable sense of purpose. That's where meaning is found.
How does that connect to today, you think, in the U.S. context?
Well, you can definitely see echoes in what people are calling the purpose pivot. In 2025, you've got economic uncertainty, sure, but also this real shift in values. People aren't just looking for a paycheck. They're demanding work that feels meaningful, that aligns with their values. We saw it with the Great Resignation, the Great Reassessment.
People leaving jobs that looked good on paper but felt empty.
Exactly. And you see concrete examples. Think about high-earning professionals in major U.S. hubs, like tech workers in Seattle or finance folks in Boston or New York. We hear stories about them leaving these secure, lucrative careers.
To do what?
To start nonprofits focusing on climate change or social justice. Or maybe they switch entirely into teaching or healthcare in underserved areas. They are actively choosing the hardest path, often involving a huge pay cut, maybe even facing ridicule from former colleagues.
Because the purpose outweighs the comfort.
Precisely. They recognize that the ultimate value isn't in the salary or the status, but in feeling like their work matters. Towey's story validates that difficult choice. He saw Mother Teresa step away from security into squalor, sacrifice, total uncertainty, because it promised something eternal. Enacting God's love for the poorest, it shows that the painful path, the one that demands everything, is often the one that gives life its deepest structure and meaning.
And that deep structure is built on some fascinating paradoxes in her life. Like, subscribe and share for more update and continue to next. Okay, part 2 really dives into these paradoxes, starting with chapter 4, spiritual poverty. This is, well, it's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? The core theme is this hidden ache. This woman, known globally for her closeness to God, was actually struggling profoundly with God's absence, this dark night of the soul.
It is, for many people who read the book, the single most astonishing and frankly profound revelation Towey shares, because it completely upends the popular image.
Right, you picture her having this constant direct line to the divine.
Exactly. But the emotional turning point here is the uncovering, mainly through her letters that came out later, of this lifelong dark night. And we need to stress lifelong. This wasn't a brief period of doubt. This was decades of feeling spiritual desolation, God's silence, his absence, even while she was outwardly radiating faith and serving millions.
That just shatters the myth of effortless faith, doesn't it?
Completely. And for Towey, learning this instilled this deep empathy. It reframed everything. Her service wasn't flowing from a place of spiritual comfort or consolation. It was an act of sheer will, of radical fidelity, despite the absence of comfort.
It almost makes her faith seem stronger, or at least defines it differently.
I think it does. The key ideas here are complex but powerful. First, she teaches us, through her hidden struggle, that true spiritual wealth isn't about accolades or feeling good or having mystical experiences. It's about inner peace found in faithfulness and just keeping going. And second, that spiritual dryness, that darkness, it doesn't mean you're failing. It's part of the journey. It tests the soul, tempers it, refines it like fire refines gold, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Her endurance, performing these acts of love in the total absence of inner consolation, becomes the ultimate testament to her commitment.
How does this resonate today in 2025, with mental health being so much more openly discussed?
It resonates profoundly. Towey's account of her struggles speaks directly to these often hidden epidemics of doubt and spiritual fatigue within faith communities here in the U.S. So many people feel intense guilt or isolation when their experience of faith doesn't match the often projected ideal of constant joy and certainty. They struggle silently.
And this book, by revealing her struggle, essentially says, it's okay.
Exactly. It validates their experience. It says, look, even this person, considered a living saint by many, felt this profound darkness for decades. Your struggle doesn't make you a failure.
That's huge.
It is. Her endurance kind of validates the inner turmoil many people suppress. And you see echoes in modern approaches, mindfulness retreats, secular therapy that addresses spiritual issues, even faith-based apps designed specifically to help people navigate doubt and spiritual dryness. Mother Teresa faced that darkness largely alone for 50 years, showing that spiritual maturity often involves confronting that void, accepting the desolation, and just persisting in service anyway. That's fidelity, pure and simple.
It's incredible. And what's equally incredible is how this deep spiritual poverty existed alongside such astounding, practical, almost worldly accomplishment. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Yeah, which leads us straight into Chapter 5, A Born Entrepreneur. This is the other side of the paradox, right? The theme is the undeniable, almost startling savvy of the builder behind the habit. How did this seemingly unworldly woman manage to turn a divine spark into a massive, effective, worldwide organization?
It's a fascinating chapter, especially because Towey, with his background in D.C. law and understanding organizational structures, was perfectly placed to see and appreciate her strategic genius. He wasn't just seeing the charity, he was seeing the operation.
Right, he could recognize the skills involved.
Exactly. And the emotional turning point for him was grasping the sheer scale of her boldness, the risks she took. She literally started with nothing, scraping by in one slum hut. But then you see her negotiating with powerful business leaders, charming global media, begging for bucks, securing land, dealing with governments.
Skills you'd associate with the CEO. Absolutely. He saw the vision, the network building, the logistical planning, the resourcefulness, skills usually honed in boardrooms, not convents. And it ignited something in Towey, too, tapping into his own ambitious nature, but redirecting it.
It really is like an early case study in social enterprise.
You could absolutely frame it that way. The key ideas are clear. Vision combined with relentless grit. That builds empires, whether they're for profit or, in her case, for good. And crucially, her engine was this radical trust in providence, in God's provision. That faith seemed to fuel innovation and action, even when, materially speaking, the coffers were empty. She didn't wait for funding. She saw a need and acted.
How does that model compare to what we see in the U.S. today?
Well, you can definitely see the missionaries of charity model as a kind of prototype for the modern social enterprise movement here. Right. We've got this boom in the U.S., especially in areas like, say, AI ethics or environmental justice ventures.
B corporations, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Certified B Corp, companies explicitly trying to balance mission with profit. Mother Teresa was instinctively doing that decades ago, maximizing impact with minimal overhead, prioritizing the mission above all else. Her innate business sense was just applied to the problem of profound poverty.
So she was basically fundraising, building global infrastructure, managing logistics, before startup culture was even a thing.
Pretty much. You could compare her resourcefulness to modern U.S. micro-lending platforms that empower marginalized communities. She operated with that same philosophy. Extreme need requires extremely resourceful, immediate entrepreneurial action. Towey describes watching her secure land deals or manage cross-continental logistics, all while wearing that simple, iconic $10 sari. The juxtaposition is just incredible.
And all of that drive, that entrepreneurial spirit, it all traced back to one specific moment, didn't it? Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Yes, Chapter 6, A Calling. This brings us back to the absolute bedrock, the spiritual foundation for everything else. The theme is that thunderous whisper, as Towey puts it, that launched her entire mission. That moment, she felt called to leave her relatively comfortable life.
As a teacher in Albania, part of the Loreto Order, and step into the chaos of the Indian streets, the chapter emphasizes that a true calling isn't like a gentle suggestion you can ignore. It's an imperative, something you have to seize, or it consumes you.
And the emotional core is that famous story of the train ride, right?
That's the pivotal moment. It was hugely significant for Towey, too, helping him reorient his own path away from the DC power games he knew. He recounts the story of her train journey, where she heard the words, "I thirst," Christ's words from the cross, expressing spiritual and physical longing echoing in her soul.
Like a direct command. Exactly. A divine jolt. An inescapable command that propelled her out of the classroom, away from the familiar, into the slums, into the unknown. It required this complete and likely terrifying demolition of her previous life plan, her identity as a Loreto nun.
That's a huge leap of faith.
Massive. And the key idea flowing from this is profound. A true calling demands everything. It's not a hobby, not a side project. It consumes your identity. It demands total commitment in pursuit of something eternal, something beyond yourself.
How does that idea of an all-consuming calling land today in 2025, especially with discussions around work-life balance?
It creates a really powerful counter-narrative. Think about the ongoing discussion in the U.S. workforce around things like quiet quitting.
Right, doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, people consciously disengaging, setting firm boundaries, protecting their time and energy, often because they feel their jobs lack deeper meaning or purpose. They're trying to preserve themselves from their work.
And Mother Teresa was the polar opposite of quiet quitting. She was quiet, all in.
Exactly. Utterly all in. Her total commitment becomes inspirational, particularly now. It speaks to this counter-movement we're also seeing. People taking sabbaticals, career breaks, specifically for soul-searching, trying to find that meaningful direction, that thing worth going all in for.
They realize the paycheck isn't enough.
Right. They sense their current job might be just that, a job, a structure for earning money, but not a true calling. Towey saw that Mother Teresa's entire life, its structure, its coherence, its incredible energy, was defined by answering that call. And that gave her life its ultimate meaning, a meaning he then sought for himself.
And that coherent sense of purpose allowed her to embrace those society rejected. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Okay, Part 3 lifts more at her humanity and her real-world influence. Chapter 7, Mother of Outcasts, gets right to the heart of her work. The theme is this radical welcome, right? Actually transforming fear and revulsion into tenderness, making the forgotten feel like family. This is where Towey really shifts from being just an observer or legal counsel to a participant. He has to overcome his own deep-seated squeamishness, his own cultural conditioning about who is untouchable.
That must have been hard.
He describes it as incredibly challenging. The emotional turning point is witnessing her actions up close, day after day, seeing her physically bathing people with leprosy, tenderly holding the dying at Calcutta, the home for the dying destitute, dealing with conditions and individuals that society, both Indian and Western, preferred to ignore entirely.
And he saw her touch actually change things.
He did. He saw how her physical touch, her presence, seemed to transform the fear and isolation of these individuals into a sense of belonging, of being seen, of being loved. And watching that day in and day out, it melted his own initial, maybe Washingtonian detachment. It turned him into this fierce personal advocate for the dignity of every single person.
It really drives home that idea that the outcasts, the people we push away, they mirror our own fears, don't they? Our own vulnerability.
Absolutely. Towey realizes that loving them, truly seeing them, It's also an act of healing for ourselves. It forces us to confront our own fears of sickness, of mortality, of suffering, of the other. It's radical self-confrontation as much as it is charity.
How does her model, the way she ran those homes like Calcutta, connect to how we deal with crises in the U.S. today?
Well, Towey documents how her hospices operated on this principle of radical, non-negotiable dignity and inclusivity. They become a kind of vital model, I think, for how U.S. communities grapple with really complex social crises.
Like what specifically?
Think about the challenges of providing humane, compassionate care during refugee crises, for instance, or the ongoing struggle to manage the epidemic of opioid addiction and severe mental illness we see on the streets of so many American cities. Her model provides a blueprint for care centered purely on human dignity, regardless of the person's background or condition.
The level of commitment that requires from the people doing the work, it's immense.
It's staggering. And you can compare her approach to the kind of radical empathy needed by, say, community integration programs working with formerly incarcerated individuals, or local aid groups serving the most vulnerable right here in the U.S.
Like outreach workers dealing with addiction in Appalachia or Philly?
Exactly. Or those working with people experiencing chronic homelessness and severe mental illness in places like Portland or San Diego. Mother Teresa's core teaching, seen through Towey's experience, is that dignity isn't something you earn. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's a fundamental, non-negotiable human right, even for those society has completely written off. Her service was the living embodiment of refusing to let anyone die alone, unloved, unseen.
That kind of intense physical work demands incredible inner strength, but also maybe a sense of lightness. Like subscribe and share for more update and continue to next.
Yes, which makes Chapter 8, A Human Heart, so important. It shatters that image of the solemn, distant plaster saint. The theme here is that she was human. She laughed, Towey says. She teased people. She enjoyed simple things like ice cream. Holiness, he discovered, actually had a very human face.
This chapter provides such a crucial balance to the accounts of suffering and spiritual darkness. It shows the warmth.
What are some of the moments he describes?
Well, the emotional turning point for Towey seems to be experiencing these small, unexpected moments of her personality. Like she might playfully scold him about something trivial. He mentions her teasing him once about wearing shorts that she thought were too much like miniskirts while volunteering.
Yeah. Or moments of shared laughter, or quite giggle, even amidst the grief and intensity of the work. These little interactions, they thought his rather guarded, maybe typically DC, heart. They allowed him to connect with her not just as an icon, but as a real person, building this joyful kinship.
It makes her relatable. The key idea is just that holiness is human. It can be flawed, funny, fierce, loving, all at once.
Exactly. And Towey's discovery of this allows the rest of us, reading it, to kind of breathe. It suggests that perfection, or emotional distance, isn't required to live a life of purpose or deep faith. You can be holy and enjoy ice cream.
That feels really relevant today with social media showing these perfect, filtered lives.
Immensely relevant. In 2025, we're bombarded with these highly curated, impossibly idealized versions of people, leaders, influencers. This chapter acts as a counterweight. It humanizes an icon, and in doing so, it boosts this growing demand we see in the U.S. for authentic leadership. People are tired of manufactured perfection. They crave realness.
It's the perfect antidote to the Instagram life, isn't it?
It really is. Her authenticity, the small human moments Towey shares, they contrast so sharply with that sterile celebrity culture. And it aligns perfectly with the rise of things like wellness podcasts or leadership blogs that emphasize vulnerability, imperfection, showing the struggle behind the success. Seeing her enjoy simple pleasures gave Towey permission, perhaps, to be less rigid, more joyful, even in the midst of his own demanding work.
And that joy, it wasn't just incidental, was it? It seemed like a deliberate practice for her. Like subscribe and share for more update and continue to next.
Yeah, Chapter 9, A Joyful Christian, explores where that energy, that lightness came from. The core theme is this irrepressible spark she had, how she could turn the absolute drudgery cleaning wounds day after day, washing endless linens into something joyful. Joy, for her, wasn't about circumstances being good. It was a choice, rooted in gratitude. Towey sets the scene so effectively. He talks about the monsoon season in Kolkata, which sounds just relentlessly depressing, everything damp, gloomy, gray. Totally. And yet, amidst that physical and emotional gloom, the emotional turning point for Towey is hearing her spontaneous hymns of praise, hearing her laughter echoing through the convent. This contagious buoyancy, he says, it would lift him out of his own moments of despair or exhaustion. It proved to him that her inner state wasn't dictated by her external environment.
That's incredible resilience.
It is. And the key idea is profound. Joy isn't dependent on circumstances. It's a radical choice, a disciplined practice even, rooted for her in this deep gratitude for finding the divine, finding Christ, in the faces of the people she served, even in the most miserable routines.
How does that kind of resilience play against our current climate?
Well, it feels like a critical antidote to the negativity that often dominates, right? The 204/7 news cycle, the endless scroll of crises on social media, what people call doom scrolling.
Yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed, feel defeated.
Incredibly easy, especially if you're a sensitive person. It can feel paralyzing. But Towey observed her operating somehow above that paralysis. Her faith-fueled resilience becomes a model.
Is it just like the positive thinking movements we see online?
I think it's deeper than that. While we see contemporary positivity trends, the affirmations on Instagram Reels, the focus on good vibes, her foundation seemed much more robust. Her joy wasn't just surface-level optimism. It was this active internal force forged in her spiritual commitment. It made her joy unbreakable, Towey suggests. Even when she was face-to-face with death, horrific diseases, extreme suffering daily, it was resilience built in the fire, not just positive thinking.
And that inner strength, that moral core, gave her incredible weight when dealing with the powerful. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Absolutely. Chapter 10, In the Palace, shifts the focus to her influence on the world stage. It shows her authority wasn't political, it was purely moral. The theme is this fascinating clash, the crown and the cross, you could say, how her simple, unyielding truth could just cut through all the pomp and circumstance of high-level diplomacy. This must have been particularly striking for Towey, coming from Washington. He was used to the rigid protocols, the deference, the careful power dynamics of D.C.
Right, knowing who's important, how to speak to them.
Exactly. And the emotional turning point for him was witnessing her operate completely outside those rules. Seeing her fearless ability to gently but firmly correct presidents, or charm princesses, not with flattery, but with her straightforward, unyielding moral truth. She just sliced through the usual deference. And Towey says watching this was profoundly humbling. It redefined power for him, seeing it flow not from title or position, but from absolute moral integrity.
So the lesson wasn't just for the presidents, it was for Towey too.
Very much so. The lesson for him and for us reading it is clear. Real influence, the kind that actually changes hearts and minds, it flows from integrity, from authenticity, not from your job title or how much money you have. And she taught him that often the people in palaces, the powerful, they need mercy, and sometimes challenging truth the most, because they're often the most insulated from reality, the most isolated by their status.
How does that resonate with, say, philanthropy or advocacy today?
It serves as a crucial model for ethical advocacy. Think about the intense scrutiny on elite philanthropy. Now, the debates you hear around forums like Davos or at major U.S. political fundraisers. Questions about whether the wealthy are truly connecting with the needs on the ground or just dictating solutions from afar.
Her power wasn't based on donations she might bring, it was her moral standing.
Precisely. Her authority was absolute because it was purely moral. Her approach becomes a kind of blueprint for people working today. U.S. climate justice leaders, maybe, or anti-poverty advocates, humanitarian lobbyists, people who have to navigate those rooms of power, meet with CEOs or influential politicians.
Without selling out.
Exactly, without compromising their integrity. While keeping the focus relentlessly on the human cost, on the people they represent, she acted like this fearless, sari-clad conscience, ensuring the powerful were never allowed to completely forget the poorest of the poor. She brought the reality of the gutter into the palace.
And having that kind of integrity meant she could also withstand criticism when it inevitably came. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Okay, Part 4 delves into confrontation, her enduring fidelity, and ultimately her legacy. Chapter 11, Answering the Critics, tackles the tough reality that comes with public life. The theme is, well, defending the defender. Towey unpacks the criticisms she faced and how she, and he by extension, learned to respond.
Yeah, this is important because she wasn't universally adored. She faced significant, sometimes quite harsh, public criticism about the quality of medical care in her homes, about her theological views on suffering, about her fundraising methods, accepting donations from controversial figures.
Stuff that made headlines.
Exactly. And the emotional turning point for Towey was being there alongside her as these criticisms, sometimes feeling like smears of hypocrisy, were leveled. He observed her response, which was often serene. Her rebuttals were usually brief, rooted in prayer, and crucially, completely non-reactive to the emotional charge or anger behind the attack.
She didn't get drawn into fights. Largely, no. And seeing her maintain that composure, that focus on the mission despite the attacks, it fortified Towey. It helped him deal with his own sensitivity to public scrutiny, his own doubts when faced with negativity.
What are the key takeaways from that for us today?
They feel incredibly relevant in our current climate. First, criticism doesn't necessarily invalidate your work or your conviction. In fact, it often tests it, strengthens it. Second, her method, responding with love, or often with quiet faith and just continuing the work, is often far more effective at disarming attacks than getting into a public slanging match. Escalating the conflict rarely helps and can make you look defensive or self-serving.
It's almost like a historical toolkit for dealing with online attacks today, isn't it? In the age of cancel culture.
You could definitely see it that way. We live in such a polarized environment. Online trolls, rapid-fire judgment. Mother Teresa's approach models how to maintain your conviction, your integrity, without getting sucked into the destructive, inflammatory noise.
It's about applying grace and staying focused on the mission, even when under fire.
Exactly. Her response style measured, always bringing it back to the core mission, rarely making it personal, is such a stark contrast to the immediate, often angry, online responses we see so often today. It's about standing firm on the truth of your actions and intentions, Towey learned, regardless of the noise, trusting the work to speak for itself.
And that inner conviction was deeply tied to her ability to endure that profound silence within herself. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Yeah, Chapter 12, In Darkness as in Light, brings us back to that staggering spiritual core we touched on earlier. The theme is confronting that abyss within, that feeling of God's absence, but maintaining unyielding fidelity anyway. Staying true even when feeling forsaken.
This really deepens the exploration of her dark night. It's the culmination of that theme. The emotional turning point isn't just knowing about the darkness, but the impact of her personal letters becoming public. Letters where she bared her soul, described the torment, the feeling of utter abandonment by God.
Reading those must have been intense for Towey. He describes it as gripping because it revealed something profound. Saints aren't exempt from spiritual agony. They stumble, they struggle, they feel lost. But the key was, she persisted. For over 50 years in that state, this revelation completely changed Towey's view, and likely the reader's view, of what struggle and endurance really mean.
It moves beyond simple piety. The key ideas are just staggering. The darkness doesn't just test faith, it refines it, maybe even perfects it in a way.
And perhaps the most radical idea, that the ultimate act of devotion, the ultimate surrender, might be to offer that very torment, that inner pain, back to God as your prayer, as your service. Using the darkness itself as fuel for bringing light to others. She lived for others, even when her own inner world felt like, she sometimes described it, a living hell.
How does that connect with people struggling with faith today?
It's incredibly validating. Again, think about the context of 2025, with more openness around mental health, and also, significantly, around spiritual trauma or disillusionment within faith systems in the U.S. People often feel immense guilt if their faith isn't easy, if they doubt, if they feel disconnected from God. They think they're failing.
And her story basically says, you're not alone, and it doesn't mean you failed.
Exactly. It validates those faith doubts in the most powerful way possible. Her story finds echoes in modern resources therapy specializing in spiritual issues, spiritual direction, even apps offering guided reflections for times of doubt. These tools acknowledge that wrestling with faith, feeling God's silence, is often a central, necessary part of a mature spiritual journey, not a sign you're doing it wrong. Her private, lifelong struggle becomes this public testament that fidelity means staying at your post, continuing the work of love, even when you feel completely abandoned. It's the ultimate act of trust.
And that incredible fidelity lasted right until the very end. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. Chapter 13. Saying goodbye is inevitably poignant. It brings us to the end of her physical life. The core theme is the quiet dignity of her departure. Towey describes how, as frailty finally claimed this seemingly unbreakable woman, the love around her just lingered. It persisted beyond breath.
It's a very moving chapter. The emotional turning point for Towey is being there, part of those bedside vigils in her final days. He describes watching her fade, her whisper becoming fainter, and he talks about the initial wave of grief naturally, but how it quickly shifted into something else.
What was that?
Gratitude, a sense of bittersweet release. Realizing that for this woman who had endured so much decades of physical hardship, the constant demands of her work, and that profound inner spiritual darkness, death, was also a kind of peaceful homecoming, an end to the suffering.
That's a powerful perspective on death.
It is. And the key ideas resonate with anyone who has faced loss or is thinking about end-of-life issues. First, that endings should honor the beginnings, the life lived. And second, that love, presence, connection, they really do linger beyond the physical breath. It redefines devotion as being present right until the very last moment and beyond.
Does this connect to how we think about end-of-life care in the U.S. now?
I think it touches directly on the growing conversations we're having in 2025 about end-of-life care. As a society, we're grappling more openly with how to ensure dignity, comfort, and quality of life at the very end, moving away from a sole focus on just prolonging life at all costs towards prioritizing palliative care, pain management, emotional and spiritual support, human connection.
Her passing becomes a reminder of those fundamental human needs at the end.
Absolutely. Her death, as Towey describes the peacefulness and the loving care surrounding her, underscores the vital importance of dignity in dying. It parallels ongoing policy discussions here about expanding access to hospice care, improving palliative care standards nationwide, ensuring that every person, whether they're rich or poor, famous or unknown, can leave this life feeling respected, cared for, and surrounded by tenderness, just as she tried to ensure for the thousands she served who were dying in Kolkata.
And of course, her death immediately brought the question of her legacy to the forefront. Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Right. Chapter 14, Going Home, explores that immediate aftermath. The theme is the void she left, obviously, but also how the mission, the seeds she'd sown, just kept growing. How legacy becomes this active, propelling force, not just a memory.
Towey captures that sense of loss very powerfully. The emotional turning point is that feeling of emptiness. He describes the convent's feeling suddenly quiet, echoing her absence. A real spiritual and physical void was left by her passing.
But it wasn't just grief, was it? No. He says that in that silence, in that void, his own resolve actually hardened. There was this immediate realization. Her immense legacy, the work, it wasn't over. It was now his and the sisters and everyone she inspired to carry forward. His personal grief shifted almost instantly into this renewed sense of commitment, of action.
So the work is bigger than the person. The key idea is that homecoming, for her, was eternal. But the earthly loss doesn't stop the mission. Instead, it actually propels it forward. It cements the idea that the pursuit continues.
Exactly, and this chapter feels really relevant when you think about our culture in the U.S. in 2025. We're increasingly nomadic, aren't we? People relocate frequently for jobs, for opportunities, chasing a certain lifestyle. The traditional idea of home as a fixed geographical place is maybe less strong for many.
So how does Towey's experience redefine home?
Well, it suggests that home, true roots, might be found not just in a place, but in the service network you belong to. In the community, bonds forged through shared work. In the commitment to a lasting mission. That becomes your anchor, your stability, even in an unstable world.
Home becomes wherever the heart of the service is.
Precisely. That feeling of connection to a global, enduring mission. You see it inspiring U.S.-based diaspora groups sending aid back to their countries of origin, for example. Or it demonstrates the strength of volunteer networks that operate across state lines or even national borders. The mission itself becomes the constant, the home, even after the charismatic founder is gone.
And the world formally recognized that enduring mission, didn't it? Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next.
Yes, Chapter 15, Saint Teresa of Calcutta. This is the culmination, really, the canonization. The theme is her story being officially etched into eternity, recognized by the Church and the world.
It's a powerful chapter describing that process and the event itself. The emotional turning point is clearly the moment of canonization in Rome in 2016. Towey describes the scene, the roar from the crowd in St. Peter's Square, this huge global affirmation of decades of her quiet toil, her suffering, her unwavering service. How did that feel for him, being there?
He describes his personal pride swelling into this sense of global hope. It was a validation of her entire, often painful mission, and also a validation of the immense sacrifices made by the thousands of sisters who followed her path.
And the key idea isn't just about her becoming a saint, is it?
No, I think Towey presents it as something more inviting, that sainthood ultimately is service made visible, service incarnate. It's not some unreachable mythical status reserved for a few. It's an invitation for all of us in our own ways to participate in that feast of service, of radical love, regardless of our own flaws or limitations.
How does her canonization fit into today's context, especially regarding different faiths?
Well, celebrating her elevation in 2016 feels particularly relevant now in 2025, given the ongoing push for interfaith cooperation and dialogue in the U.S. and globally. Because her work fundamentally was universal.
She served everyone, regardless of their religion.
Exactly. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, atheists. She served anyone who was suffering without demanding conversion or adherence to her specific beliefs. She famously said she saw Christ in the face of every suffering person.
So she unified through action, not theology.
Precisely. Her elevation highlights the unifying power of compassionate service across different belief systems, and you see that reflected today in local interfaith volunteer coalitions all across the U.S. Groups from different mosques, synagogues, churches, temples, or secular groups working together on community projects. Feeding the homeless, rebuilding after natural disasters. They demonstrate that compassion is a universal language. Her legacy, in that sense, is one of radical collaboration for the common good.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. And finally, the epilogue. The work goes on, it brings everything full circle. The core theme is looking forward, confirming that her fire, her mission, wasn't extinguished with her death. It lives on in new hands. The legacy continues.
This provides the final anchor for the book, and for Towey's own journey. The emotional turning point for him after her death and canonization is witnessing the sisters. Seeing their unwavering zeal, they just kept going. Continuing the same grueling, difficult, often heartbreaking work with the same fervor, the same commitment, the same joy even.
Without the founder physically there.
Right. And seeing that continuity, that resilience in the organization she built, it reignited Towey's own sense of mission. It was the clearest possible sign that the torch had been passed successfully. It showed the immense institutional strength and the deep spiritual foundation she had managed to build.
So the key ideas are clear. Legacies live through the doers, the people who keep showing up. The call endures beyond the charismatic founder. It gets embedded in the DNA of the organization, of the movement.
And the facts bear that out, don't they? Towey mentions, and we know today, the missionaries of charity have continued to expand. They're now in over 140 countries, I believe, as of 2025. It shows that the original model, that unique blend of radical faith, grit, vision, and fidelity, it remains structurally sound. It's an enduring prototype for decentralized, grassroots, radical service.
And does it still inspire action here in the U.S.?
Absolutely. Her model, her story, it continues to fuel volunteerism. You see it reflected in the boom of digital platforms like Volunteer Match or local community apps that connect people with service opportunities. People are still seeking tangible ways to make a difference, to connect, both locally and globally. Her enduring example validates that simple, quiet acts of service, the kind of hands-on commitment Towey experienced and described so powerfully, they add up. They aggregate into massive, global, lasting impact. The work truly does go on.
Like, subscribe, and share for more update, and continue to next. #outro. Wow, what a journey through this book. Jim Towey's To Love and Be Loved. It really does give us this incredibly detailed, intimate view. It weaves together the chaos of Calcutta, the complexities of DC power politics, and the almost impossible-to-grasp spiritual pain of Mother Teresa, all into one coherent human story.
It really does.
I think the main takeaway, for me at least, is just how human she was. Deeply human, yes, but with this immense, unwavering purpose. And her life, her sainthood even, wasn't defined by spiritual ease or comfort, quite the opposite. It was defined by her willingness to make those incredibly hard choices and to embrace decades of profound spiritual struggle. She was flawed, Towey shows us. She was funny, she was relentlessly devoted, and maybe above all, she was utterly authentic.
Beautifully put. And the final application of all this, the challenge maybe, for you listening. It comes back to where Towey started. His journey began when he recognized his own emptiness, his own kind of spiritual poverty, right in the middle of all his professional success.
Right, the hollowness.
Exactly. So the primary relevance of this whole deep dive, perhaps, is the need for us to recognize that same potential for spiritual poverty in our own communities, even amidst the incredible material wealth we see in the U.S., and maybe even more importantly within ourselves. We have to be willing to admit the hollowness, the places where we feel lacking, before we can hope to fill them with real purpose.
It's that challenge to look past the easy answers, the quick fixes, the viral trends, and seek out those messy, real, dignity-restoring connections that she embodied.
Precisely. Which leads us to maybe one final provocative thought for you to carry away from this, something to mull over.
Okay.
If Mother Teresa, this global icon of faith, experienced a lifelong dark night, decades of agonizing doubt, feeling abandoned by God, while simultaneously performing this incredible service that inspired millions, then how does recognizing and accepting our own inevitable internal struggles, our own periods of doubt or darkness, how does that acceptance become in itself the first crucial act of service to the world? Because maybe it's only by accepting our own authentic, struggling humanity that we can truly connect with and genuinely serve the struggling humanity of others. You can't meet someone in their darkness if you're pretending you don't have any of your own.
That's a profound thought to end on. Accepting our own darkness to better serve the darkness in others.
Something to think about.
Definitely. Thank you so much for guiding us through this today, and thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Jim Towey's To Love and Be Loved. If you want to explore further, you can find links to the book itself and some resources about the ongoing work of the Missionaries of Charity right there in the description. Goodbye for now, everyone, and keep exploring the depths of purpose in your own lives.